Welcome to Unapologetically Anxious Me, Confessions of a Haitian Girl, the podcast where I blend life, love, sex, and relationships with mental health, social issues, and history, all from my very unabashed perspective. Join me, Joe Cicerone, as we unravel the power of vulnerability, celebrate storytelling, our history, and connect with incredible individuals who have tales to share. Let's dive deep into our essence and the narratives that mold us, because in this space, we believe in the magic of authenticity and the beauty of being unapologetically you. Welcome back to another episode of Unapologetically Anxious Me, Confessions of a Haitian Girl. I'm your host, Joe, and I am so excited because I have the incredible Sammie Cimarelli. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yes, you did great.
Yes, from season 1 of Netflix, The Circle. Thank you again for being here. I'm just excited to be talking to you because I think that we only got to see like a little snapshot of like who you were on The Circle, and I absolutely fell in love with that show. I think I discovered it, of course, during the pandemic, so it was definitely one of those times where I was just like, I need something different, and this was just like perfect, and it kind of made isolating seem cool.
Yeah, no, it
And it was
definitely
like
did.
fit for the pandemic. How have you been since being on the show, since we've seen you on our screens? What has changed in your life?
So much of my life has changed. When I went onto the circle, I was living in Miami. I was
Mhm.
a single girl living my life in Miami, just like, when I say single, I mean like not married and no kids. I was definitely in a relationship. Um, but since then I moved to LA. I lived in LA for like a little bit over 2 years, and then I got
Mhm.
pregnant. And I had my son. I lived in LA for another like 6 months. And then when he was 6 months, we moved back to Pennsylvania.
Mhm.
I bought a house in PA, and now I've been back here, back home with my family, just raising my son. It's been a crazy 4 years. It's wild to think about all that's happened.
Is that where you're originally from, Pennsylvania?
Yes. Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah. Right
okay.
outside of Philadelphia. So I'm like 15. I grew up like 15 minutes from Center City.
Okay. Okay, good to know. On the show, you were definitely like the baddie. You were just I loved you immediately when I saw you. I was so mad that you didn't win. Like, I think like, I
Me too.
was so confident. Like me and my husband were like, really rooting. And I was just like, no, it's gonna be her. So like
Yeah.
when you did get voted off, I was just like, how? I was so angry, but I was definitely emotionally invested. How did that even start? Like when did you even get the idea to like go on a reality show? Did you ever see that in your future?
I never saw any of this happening for me. I'll be very honest with you. It kind of just fell in my lap. So I had gotten like, I guess an email, and I
Mhm.
had filled it out. And then a couple months later, it didn't say anything about like a reality show or anything like that. I honestly don't remember the email too well, but I just remember getting something and I filled it out and I forgot about it. Like it was just like an email. I saw it. I was like, oh, this looks cool, whatever.
Mhm.
And then around, I would say, April is when I had an interview,
Mhm.
and it was a Zoom interview just like this, and it was with a casting director, Tiffany, and then Raphael.
Mhm.
And I'm still friends with them to this day. They're both amazing people. And it was like a 2-hour Zoom interview, and they were like, okay, we're gonna compress this whole entire video into 1 minute, and we're
Mhm.
gonna give it to production, and they're gonna see if they like you. And I'm like, what the hell? I don't even know what the fuck I did. Like I couldn't even recall like what the last 2 hours was just like. So I was like, all right, whatever. I didn't hear from them for months, and then in July they reached out. They said I was moving on in the process. They flew me to LA,
Mhm.
and I had an interview there. I stayed in LA for like 3 days, and I met like the production company because the show was originally from the UK. So I met the
Mhm.
people from the UK who ran the show. They were amazing, two women, beautiful. They're so great. And yeah, then from there I flew out. I found out like 2 days before that I got onto the show, or not necessarily on, because we could have all flown to the UK because that's where it's
Mhm.
filmed, and then never even got on the show, which is crazy to
Oh.
think about.
Oh, wow.
Um, yeah, so 2 days before they were like, okay, you're going to the UK. And then that was it. I was, among the first group that had gone in, and I stayed in till the end.
Wow. I mean, I think that's pretty exciting because you probably didn't know like what this was involved. Like, what were you thinking when you were in the middle of all this? Were you like anxious about like what it was going to be? Did you even think it was going to like take off or actually air?
I honestly didn't even know what to think. My family was like, "You're just gonna fly to the UK. You don't even know like what this is. Like you don't even know what's happening." Like the minute I got off the plane, there was a chaperone waiting for me with like a baggie, and I had to put all my stuff in it, my ID, my wallet, my phone, everything. I'm like, "Well, you guys could literally kill me right now, and nobody would find me." So this
You're
is
like, I'm
amazing.
probably being trafficked.
Yeah, like what the fuck is happening? So, and then as soon as I got in the car, like I had headphones. They put noise blocking ear muffs on, cover
Hmm.
over my eyes. Like it was like real life getting kidnapped. And but I would do it again and again and again. But it was an amazing experience. No, I had no idea what to expect. I never thought I wanted to be on TV. It was such a blurred time and process. And being there, I was kind of just like in a bubble because once I landed back in Miami, I'll be honest, like I kind of forgot about the show because
Hmm.
I landed back in, mind you. I hadn't been working for a month, but I
Hmm.
was still getting my bills paid. My bills were still getting taken out of my bank account. I was
Yeah.
broke. I came back and I just hit the ground running and I was working. So then the show didn't air for another 6 months. So like I didn't talk about it. Nobody knew about it. I signed NDAs and all kinds of stuff like that. Like my parents knew about it, but still nobody even really knew about it. And then it was hard not to tell my family when I got back that like I made it to the end. But once the show aired, I think it was December 11th, the trailer came out and my whole entire life changed. December 11th of 2019, my entire life changed. The trailer dropped. I had 8,000 followers. By the time the trailer dropped, I had like 30,000 followers. And
Wow.
then January 1st, when the show aired, I had like 100K. And within 3 months, 4 months, I had 1 million followers. And it was
Wow.
just like everyone knew my name. Everywhere I went, people knew who I was. My family was getting noticed. People were contacting my family, like, oh my God, I can't believe this. Like,
Mhm.
and it was just fully a life-changing experience. But no, I had no idea that this was going to be this way. And I didn't even, I had zero expectations, which I think was
Mhm.
the best part.
Being in the actual filming process, like what was that like? What was it like to be in the house by yourself? Like, do you have someone like in there with you, or are you just by yourself?
So you're completely by yourself. There's 9 cameras throughout it's an apartment.
Hmm.
It was 8 floors. So each of us was on a floor. And that's it. You like upon walking in, when you see us all enter our apartments, there's like 2 or 3 people outside of the door, like
Hmm.
hyping us up, like go in there, you're gonna do great, like just smiles, talk, remember to talk out loud, and like you
Yeah,
have to think through all your processes because you have to,
right.
and tell everybody what's going on. So, yeah, but once you're in, you're in. Like we couldn't open the doors, we couldn't open the windows, we didn't even have a remote to control the TVs, we didn't
Wow.
have scissors, we didn't have irons, we literally nothing. Um, literally nothing. We couldn't even control the lights. Like all those LED lights, they're so fucking hot.
Wow.
Um, yeah, we couldn't control any of that stuff. And then so there was one big speaker in the hallway. So like when you first walk into the apartment, there's like a little hallway that connects the bathroom, the bedroom, another bedroom, and then the kitchen,
Hmm.
living room. And in the hallway, there's this big speaker. So that's where they would communicate to you from. But
Hmm.
everything else is just there's cameras. There was 2 cameras in the bedroom, one in the bathroom, one in the hallway, one, two, three in like the living room kitchen area, and then 2 more in the kitchen.
Okay.
And they're
Yeah.
massive. They're like huge cameras that like there's no sound in there, mind you. We couldn't listen to music or none of that, no TV, nothing. But like
Hmm.
everywhere I walked, if I was even quiet, I would just hear like these big ass cameras just following me everywhere. It was wild.
It's so crazy. I had Alyssa on before and interviewed her, and she was saying that you kind of forget that they're there after a while.
Like an hour.
So it doesn't get like lonely just like being in there and not having anyone to talk to, or are you talking to that person regularly?
No, I would just talk to myself, if I'm being honest. Like I would just talk. You know what I mean? Like I mean, I'm a talker and I talk anyway, and I have animals, so like I'm so used to just talking and no one fucking responding. So I was, it was easy for me to just to talk out loud. I think
Mhm.
about everything. I just like I have a lot of energy, so it wasn't hard for me. And to be honest, we were pretty busy. Like, during our times where we weren't like playing a game or, in conversation, it was like we're thinking about all of these things. There's just so much to think about.
So they keep you engaged the whole time. You're not just
Pretty
sitting.
much. I mean, we had a lot of downtime too, but it wasn't like boring, if that
Good.
makes sense. Like I was never just sitting there like, what the fuck? You know what I mean? It was never
Hmm.
like that. Because usually when we're playing games or when we're engaging in a conversation just for like the continuity,
Continuity,
they
yes.
want
Sorry.
the continuity of those times to be the same. So like
Hmm.
if you're not eating by the time that you're sitting down and playing a game, you can't like go eat. Or if you're in a conversation, you can't like go get changed. So it was like as soon as I would be done a conversation or be done a game, I would be like, all right, let me go run and get changed, or let me go to the bathroom, or let me wash my face or do my makeup. There was always like in between, there was something for me to do.
Okay. Interesting. Now that it's in what, 6 seasons now? Five,
Yeah,
6 seasons, I
crazy.
think. How has it changed since your time of filming, do you think?
Okay. Well, I would say our season number one, the first season was more genuine,
Okay,
in how we approached the show and how we
I
approached
agree.
the game and our voting and stuff. It was very like genuinely like, oh, I care about this person, not gameplay.
Hmm.
Whereas the next 5 seasons were all gameplay and people were
Gameplay.
coming in there ready to win that money.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's the biggest difference.
Yeah.
But it doesn't take away from the genuineness of who the people are. I
Hmm.
would say that the franchise itself, in with just the circle, all of the cast members, majority of the cast members are very genuine, sweet, amazing people, and like no matter what will always be like cool. You know what I mean? Like it's
Hmm.
always going to be like a family kind of thing. Like I feel like it's very different from other franchises, especially just being in the reality world and meeting other castmates and meeting other people from different shows. I
Hmm.
think The Circle is just like kind of like the oddball out of all the shows, but
Yeah.
also like the closest.
Would you do that type of show again
Yeah, I think I would do that type of show before any other kind of show.
if there was like an all stars
Hell
of
yeah. I'm
circle?
in there because I would love to be by myself for one.
Hmm.
And two, I would love to be a catfish. I would want to see if I could actually do well being a catfish.
Yeah. And I mean, you were so genuine. Like, that was one of the reasons why I think, like, so many people were just like, Of course she's gonna win." Like,
Mhm.
and like, but you were genuine, you were strategic in a way, but like you were still like yourself,
Yes.
and so I wonder, like, if you were a catfish, what would your identity be? Like, what would you go
I
in
think
as?
I would be like a cute little old man. I would want to be like a cute little old man, like my grandfather who passed away in 2020, but I would want to be like him. Like this is just cute, genuine, sweet, like lovable little human being that like people would just it would just be so hard for someone to be like, mm-mm, you
Hmm.
know? I
I
would
think
I would
what
channel
always
that.
gives those catfish away, it seems, is like them not really knowing that person or
Yes.
knowing much about that older generation. So
Yep.
I think you definitely got to do a lot of study.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But I would come in prepared.
I think that'd be so cool. And I'd love to see you back on TV
Yeah.
and doing that. I think that would be really interesting to see a bunch of people from past episodes
Hmm.
all in one season, like
Yeah.
an All Stars or whatever. I think that would be
Yeah.
really cool. When we met you on the show, you were a behavioral therapist
Hmm.
and worked with children with autism.
Yeah.
Okay. So tell me about that. Like, when was that like what you went to college for? Do you still do that?
Yeah, so I have my bachelor's in psychology and criminology with a
Mm-hmm.
minor in sociology. And I moved to Miami after graduating college. And when I lived there for about a year and then I started my master's program.
Mm-hmm.
And I graduated with my master's in December of 2020, so like a year after the show had come out.
Mm-hmm.
And I stayed a therapist for another like year. I moved to LA and I stayed a therapist there. And I would say I moved to LA in like August of 2020. And then after my grandfather died, I gave it another like 4 months. I think I quit in like April or May
Mhm.
of 2021. And I've strictly just been doing social media since then, which I'm
Mhm.
super, super grateful for, especially after having my son, like being able to be with him. I've literally, not saying this is healthy, but I've never been away from my son in the
Oh,
2 years that he's been alive. Like
okay.
he's never been without me ever. So I'm super grateful for that. I haven't had to, I've been able to experience every little thing with him. But I do need to sit for my board exam or all of my schooling and money goes to waste. But I've just been procrastinating and, you know, I don't even know. I don't, who knows if I'll actually sit for this exam. I would love to, but
Since the show, you have become a mom. And so, what is like the biggest thing that changed for you about becoming a mom and kind of, transitioning from that role of like being young and doing really cool things like the circle? But
yeah.
I'm guessing now, like, if you were just like starting that journey, it would probably be a little bit different, or maybe you would think about it a little differently.
I mean, it definitely was a life switch for me
Hmm.
because I went from being this like party girl in Miami and LA and traveling and all these things to being like, okay, I got to sit down because I'm pregnant and can't do shit. And then moving back to Pennsylvania was not ideal. Like being back here was not something that I ever thought I would do, to be very honest with you. So that was really difficult for me at first because it's like I didn't feel like I was done living in California, or to be honest, if I didn't get pregnant, I probably would have moved back to Miami.
Hmm.
So that was definitely hard for me to like process, but now I think that it's too hard to compare the two lives, right? I was what, 24 when I went on the show. I'm going to be 30 this year. I have a child, I have a house. Like it just comes with maturity in life.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful for the change. I think that it's made me a better person for sure. I don't think, I know it's made me a better person. Just getting older and
Hmm.
maturing and going through all of those experiences. I don't think that I would have been as excited to have a child if I hadn't experienced those things, because
Yeah.
by the time I got pregnant, I was financially stable. I had my master's degree. I was, I had traveled the world. I had lived
Yeah.
in multiple states, multiple cities. I've met people that I would never think that I would meet. So it wasn't like I was like, "Oh my God, my whole world is stopping. My life is stopping."
Right.
Like I was like, "Okay, well, I got to experience so much in 25 years, 26 years that people don't experience their whole lives. And
Hmm.
here I'm about to have a baby and life doesn't stop. You know what I mean? My
Hmm.
son has been traveling since he was 3 months old. He's been all over
Hmm.
with me. We travel everywhere together. So I think that that's another thing that I was like scared of. People always talk about how your life has to like stop when you have kids, but if anything, it's just like progressed for us.
I love that. And I think that that was something that I always said before I had children. Like, I didn't want my life to like just be about my kids. And I remember seeing so many of my friends becoming parents, and like that's all your life becomes. And I think that in a way, certain times my kids are 7 and 10. They're both on the spectrum. I think mommyhood for me definitely is nothing like what I thought it was going to look like. So I think there are times where you do, throughout their upbringing, probably fall into this like cycle because it's like all about them.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that it's so important to continue to like do you what makes you happy and bring them along for the ride, and
Mm-hmm.
that's something that I wholeheartedly believe in. So I think that I really admire just how you are as a mom and just the way you carry yourself. When we met you on the show, definitely were open about your sexuality and being bisexual. You were in a relationship at the time. Are you in a relationship now?
I'm not. Me and my son's dad split when he was about 6 months old.
Hmm.
And so that was about a year and a half ago.
What has that been like? Did you expect to be a single mom, or have you been?
No, no. And I'm not saying, I'll never say that I regret my son or regret my decisions, but I never would have went into it if I would have known that I would end up a single mom.
Mhm.
That's just like not ideal to me. And I think that's something that I've actually been processing as of lately, in therapy, having to realize, because I think the last year and a half of my life was kind of just like I was in shock.
Mm-hmm.
I had just had a baby. I was still in postpartum. I was breastfeeding. I was doing all these things. I had to move back home. It was just like a lot to process.
Mm-hmm.
And so one thing that was really hard for me is having to realize that like I want more children, and I never thought I would be a single mother, and I never thought I would not be with the person who's had the child with me. And so now
Right.
having to process the fact that not only do I want more kids, I'm gonna have to have children with another person. It's
Mm-hmm.
just like so much for me. Like I can't wrap my head around being with someone right now or bringing them around my child.
Right.
I like trust absolutely no one. I mean, shit, I haven't been away from him in 2 years, and the only people that have babysat him are my sisters. Like, he's never even had a babysitter. So, like,
Yeah, I
it's
get
just
it.
like a lot for me to wrap my head around. And so, the last year and a half has really just been me taking time for myself and getting to know myself again. I feel like I finally am just now, my son is going to be 2. I
Yeah.
finally feel like I'm myself again.
Yeah.
Finally feel like I can do my hair and my makeup and,
Yeah.
go out and have a drink or,
Mm-hmm.
go have fun. I felt like before it was like I couldn't do anything. And a lot of that is my anxiety and mom guilt, which I know. But I've gotten so much better at it now. And I finally feel like I could actually like go spend a weekend without my son now. Like I'm finally feeling like myself,
Mm-hmm.
and that's good, but still processing the fact that I have to have I have to be with somebody else. It's just like a lot. It's really, really, really tough for me. It's very tough. And being bisexual, to touch on like you talking
Mm-hmm.
about with my sexuality, I've dated men and women, and over the last year and a half, I've dated men and women. I've gone on dates, I've, experienced it. And 9 times out of 10, I'm just like I'm really picky. I'm more picky than I was before. And so it's just really been a difficult process. Cause you would think, or at least I would think, right? I'm thinking like, oh, I'm gonna date a woman, she knows I have kids.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like women naturally are just like that motherly instinct.
Pictures.
And
Yeah.
still people just don't understand. Like people
Yeah.
don't understand at all. Like you really
Yep.
just don't get it until you have kids, right? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
that's what I thought. So then I go and date people who have children. They don't fucking get it either. Because 9 times out of 10, the people that I'm dating have their partner who they had children with. So they
Mm-hmm.
have babysitters, they have helpers. It's like no one
Mm-hmm.
understands being a single mother. I
Yeah.
can't just get up and go meet you for a drink. It's 1:30. I can't just go meet you at 5 o'clock for a drink. Like
Right.
I gotta find a babysitter. I gotta figure out so much shit.
Yeah.
So it just kind of feels impossible. But I'm hoping that when Bray starts school, he's gonna be starting school in September. I'll be able to like branch out even more. And,
Mm-hmm.
I'm in absolutely no rush to get into a relationship. I still feel like I'm so young. I know I'm so young. And that will come, that will
Right.
happen. I think just the pressure that I put on myself. I'm the oldest well, the second oldest. I have 6 sisters and 2 brothers, and we're
Mm-hmm.
all super, super close. We're at least 3 or 4 years apart. And some of my siblings are even, closer than that, 2, 3 years apart. And so in my head, I'm like, my son's 2. If I was in a relationship right now, I would want to be pregnant. I would
Mm-hmm.
want my children to be close in age. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
So it's just like the pressures of that I put on myself.
Yeah.
Um, but it's a roller coaster. One day I wake up and I'm like, I actually could be single for the rest of my life and go through a surrogate. Or I'm like, oh, I could do it, go to a sperm bank and do it myself, because selfishly I've gotten used to being the only one that has to worry about Bray. So
Mm-hmm.
making all the decisions for him, that's another scary thing to think about, is having to share him with someone else. And if
Mm-hmm.
I do have another child, and God forbid that doesn't work out, because that's a possibility too.
Yeah.
People get married and stay married for 30, 40 years and then wake up and they're like, actually, I don't want to be with you anymore. And it's
Yeah.
like that can happen too. And having to think about sharing my child with somebody else is just like a thought that I'm grateful that I don't have to share Bray.
When we come into parenthood, I think that our priorities shift in
Mm.
general, and we just start thinking about in terms of two or however many children we have, and that becomes like the most important. And I mean, it's part of your identity, and so everyone who comes into your life just has to be understanding of that and be well aware of that. The right people don't question it. They don't make you question it. And I think that when you're a mom, I mean, that's for me, like, that's just the center of my world. And you either are on the boat or you're off the
No,
boat.
you're exactly, exactly. And it makes you
Like,
think about even your friends. Like there are people
mhm,
that were in my life that I was like, oh, I would never allow you around my kids. So like, why am I even friends
mhm.
with you? You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
And yeah, your tolerance for people and who you're going to allow in your life becomes a lot less, probably a lot more rigid than it was
Yeah.
when you were younger because it was like, oh, get to know anybody. But now it's like, I don't need this kind of energy
Yep.
in my world.
Exactly.
And you just start thinking about everything you can do to protect that little person, especially if you were someone who grew up with trauma or wasn't always protected yourself. I think that, like, for me, that's a big part of how I lead as a parent is that I'm always so concerned about like who's around my kids and the
Hmm.
messaging that they're getting. One of the things that I really focus on Unapologetically Anxious Me is mental health. It's been a big part of my journey, and it's a lot of the reasons why I do what I do. I really think that there's power in being vulnerable. And usually at the beginning of my conversations with everyone, I usually like do like a little bit of a mental health check-in and ask you where you're at. But I was so excited to talk to you. That completely went over my head. But where are you at in terms of your mental health at this moment?
I love this question so much because for the first time in a very long time, I finally feel like I can breathe. I
Hmm.
finally feel like, like I said, I finally feel like I am myself again.
Hmm.
Um, Mentally and physically, I feel like I'm at my best right now.
Being in the public eye and so much of your life is probably like picked at, or even so many people are probably trying to get at you at all times. Like, how do you balance that? And how do you make time for your mental health and take care of yourself?
Now it doesn't affect me. In the beginning, it was tough. It was really, really, really tough, especially I was young and
Hmm.
very rowdy and combative. I would go toe to toe with anybody. I didn't care. Now, I don't have the energy for that anymore. I just don't. I think again, it comes with the maturity, it comes with aging, it comes with there being a bigger picture of it's not just me, it's now me and a child that I have to protect and worry
Hmm.
about. And at the end of the day, I was always the person who had to have the last word or, who had to like tell my side or like tell somebody about themselves. And
Hmm.
now it's more so just protecting myself, protecting my energy for my son. It's not even, majority of the time I don't really even think about me. And
Hmm.
I think, but in the end, if I can walk away from a situation and think this is what my biggest thing always is. If I can walk away from a situation and in 20 years, I explained the situation to my son, and he's like, you know what, mom, you did your best. And that like you handled it well.
Yeah.
If that's the kind of if that's how I think that the outcome will come, then that's how I handle it. I just want my son to look back on a situation and be like, yeah, you handled that well. You know what I mean? For example, like with his dad, we went through horrible things.
Hmm.
Nobody knows about them. Not
Hmm.
even really my family knows about them, other than the select few. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And people always on social media are like, what happened? What happened? Tell us what happened with him. Tell us
Hmm.
what happened with him. And trust me when I tell you, on my worst days, all I want is the whole world to know. That's
Yeah.
all I want. I want to scream it to the rooftops. But at the end of the day, that's not how I want my son to find out anything. You know what I
Right.
mean? I want to be able to explain everything to my son, exactly
Hmm.
how it is and exactly how it happened and whatever the case may be. So it's like things like that that I just with being in social media, being on social media and having people having so much access to I wouldn't say my life, it's realistically what I tell them is what they have
Right.
access to.
Right.
And I do. I'm very open and I'm very genuine on social media. I think that's what I take pride in is being open and vulnerable and allowing people to understand that like life is life. I'm not perfect and I never will be. And I can never pretend on social media like everything's beautiful and butterflies.
Hmm.
But there's a certain extent to which I'm going to share my life and share information because my son comes first.
Right. I agree. And for me, that's a big thing. I think that part of the reason why that happens or you become so centralized about it is because you now realize that what you do impacts somebody else and like their childhood is happening right now.
Mhm.
And so it definitely becomes less about you and what you're experiencing,
Yeah.
and more about like the collective, life that you're building for them. And I think that that's hard for people to realize or know when you're not a parent. And it's just a transition that like kind of happened. With so many people constantly in and out and trying to figure out what's going on in your life, does it make you want to withdraw, or do you want to continue like opening up and telling your story? How important is that to you?
I think, again, it's a roller coaster. Every day is different.
Mm-hmm.
On my worst days when I'm angry and I'm sad, I try and get away from social media because there are times I'm human. There are times where I've gone on social media and probably shouldn't have said what I've said or probably shouldn't have posted things that I posted. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And that comes with learning. Sometimes I forget that there's almost a million people on social media following what I'm doing and looking at what
Yep.
I'm doing. And that's a lot to handle. That's a lot to carry for any person, any human being. I feel like that's also really like tough to think about. It's like I constantly have to worry about what I'm saying and what I'm doing because anything can be taken and turned and flipped around and made into something that it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
People are just going to constantly create stories about whatever you have to say or post or do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I guess on my worst days, I would say I withdraw from social media the most just for the sake of myself because I know that any little thing can set me off, any little thing can make me upset or, you know, want to post about stuff. But I wouldn't necessarily say that it makes me withdraw from wanting to share my life or share things. Um, I guess it's just like a day by day and it's situational. It's situational for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's hard, especially when
Yeah.
it's like when it's my job too. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like, okay, I can pull away, but also, do I want to make money this month? It's very like,
It
what do
kind
I
of,
want to do? You know what I mean? And then
right.
it's like, then even adding my son into it, it's like, of course I want to do things with my son. My son is my life, but then there's things of worrying about like child predators on social media and the
Mm-hmm.
statistics about that stuff. It's like
Mm-hmm.
it's so tough to differentiate and to hide things or to show certain things. And sometimes I'll post something and then like an hour later I'll look at it again and be like, wow, this probably could look bad or like, child predator might like something like this. So let me go delete it now. It's like I
Mm-hmm.
constantly have to, it's not always like my first thought isn't always like all of these things. I don't go through a checklist of like what could happen before I post. It's just like, oh, social media. This was
Mm-hmm.
something that was once fun for me, once something that like I could just like blankly and open-mindedly or empty-mindedly just post and enjoy. And now it's become more of like a homework before doing it because it's like, okay, well, my Instagram is technically my portfolio. And is this picture going to look right on my profile? On my grid. Will this make sense? Can I post this? Oh, wait, this brand that I'm working with probably wouldn't like that I'm working with this brand. And it's like, oh my God, I constantly
Right.
have to think about a million things and it's not necessarily always enjoyable. But again, it's not anything that I would ever take for granted. And I'm so grateful for it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a lot. It's a lot.
Right.
And I wish people just had a little bit more understanding. I know that people like look at influencers and creators as just like, it's stupid. But
Mm-hmm.
monetarily it really is helpful. Like I was able to buy my own house, you know what I mean,
Right.
for me and my son. I think I'm just like that's such a great thing. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like really grateful for. So I just went on a rant, but
Congratulations. I think
yeah. Thank you.
that's such an accomplishment. I think that, to be able to like, and I think that's what one of the amazing things about content creation, being in the influencer world, is that you do really get to create the life you want, the career you want, and to have that control. Like, not a lot of people have that, and I think that's a gift to
Yeah.
even have that. We heard some of your background on the show. Like, what was your journey to figuring you out, to saying like I'm a bisexual woman and I'm proud of it? Like where did that start?
So I was in fifth grade. And
It's early.
I had a crush on this girl in my class, and yeah, that's kind of where it started. And I was like, wait a second, do I like her? And then, yeah, I went into middle school and I had like a little middle school boyfriend, but I found myself still attracted to girls. I have a cousin
Mm-hmm.
and he's gay. And so I had brought it up to him like, hey, I think I like girls. And he was like, well, our family knew he was gay and, you know, we're very accepting.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were like, just figure it out first before like, you know, you come out. Because if you think at the time when I was that age, you know, not very many people were outwardly gay
Mm-hmm.
or, you know, showing their sexuality as much as it is now. Like I'm very grateful for the world that we're in now when it comes to those things. But yeah, so at the time it was just like he was like figure it out first. And so I ended up getting a girlfriend in high school. We were together for like 3 years. She met my whole family. My family, I came out to my family and they were like, yeah, we knew already. We already knew. Like not a secret girlfriend. And that was really it. I mean, my family has been so welcoming and accepting since I was such a child. Um
Mm-hmm.
and you know, no matter what, like no matter who I've dated, no matter what I've done, they've always been my biggest support system and have always backed me up. And my family is very loud and opinionated. So growing up, I naturally was raised by very strong women who were opinionated and loud and stood for what they wanted. And
Mm-hmm.
so having that at home, it's almost like a shield when you go out into the real world because it's like, I have this at home. There's not anybody here that could say anything that would hurt my feelings because I already got my feelings hurt at home, bitch. There is nothing any of you guys could say about me because at the end of the day, I'm going home to people who accept whatever this is.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I'm forever grateful for the family that I was raised in, the women that have raised me. And yeah, that's really what it was. You know, I had such a support system that I was able to figure myself out freely.
Grief is definitely something I've been pretty open about. I recently lost my mom last summer. And so it's kind of just been a process that I've been going through ever since. And I I know that you were open on the show about your background and your mom. Tell me a little bit more about that.
I'm sorry about your mom. I know
No,
that's a
thank
tough thing. I I I say fortunately because I'm fortunate that I wasn't able to necessarily gain memories with my mom and, you know, have experience with her.
you. Mm-hmm.
So I don't, not that I don't get sad because I do, I get sad for many other reasons, but I don't necessarily have the memories and the hurt and the pain that I, for example, experienced with my grandfather, who I consider was my entire life that I lost in 2020. I'm sure it's a totally different pain that I wouldn't even wish on anybody. But when it comes to my mom, she died when I was 2 years old. So I didn't get to experience, you know,
Mm-hmm.
being with her. And it was really hard for me. I feel like I experienced a lot of identity issues. And that's something that I actually have gone through in therapy over the last 2 months that I've really been trying to dive into more is my mom was Puerto Rican, born in Puerto Rico. My dad is Puerto Rican and Italian, but I grew up in a
Mm-hmm.
predominantly white area where I was one of maybe three other Hispanic people in our school. There was maybe 10 to 20 Black people in our school. I don't think there was any Asians. Maybe there was like two or three Asians in our school. And so yeah, it wasn't very diverse to say
Mm-hmm.
the least. And that was hard for me because I went through school wanting to always straighten my hair and to wear, you know, certain clothes. And it was like when I did have my hair curly, I didn't feel pretty. When I did have my hair curly, everyone wanted to touch my hair. Everyone wanted to ask me questions about my hair.
Mm-hmm.
And so naturally, I just felt like I didn't know myself. And being raised on the Italian side of my family, no one spoke Spanish. You know, when my family would come visit from Puerto Rico or we would go to Puerto Rico, because my parents did do a great job at like taking us to Puerto Rico.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I loved it so much. I wanted to immerse myself fully in it, and then I would be taken away from it again back into our home. So it was like I constantly felt like I didn't know myself. My dad wasn't in my life. I would say around 14 is when he like kind of tried, and then like we had a rocky road, and then I ended up blocking him for a few years. And when I moved to Miami, And then we became okay. And then when my grandfather died is what really brought us close together. So I would say around 2020, when my grandfather died is when we reconciled our, everything. And then now my dad is like my best friend, which is crazy. I never thought I would say that. Like I tell my dad I love him. Ooh, I never thought I would do that. And he's a great grandfather. Horrible father at the time to me, but he's been a great dad to my brother and my sister, my two youngest that he's been raising. And he's a great grandfather. He watches my son all the time.
Mhm.
And he's a great friend. He's just like not necessarily the best parent or, family member. But I'm forever grateful for that because I had a lot of daddy issues and that really damaged a lot of my friendships and a lot of my relationships growing up. I didn't trust anybody, so naturally nobody really could trust me because I wasn't providing that same thing back to people. And so, it was a lot. It was a lot of not knowing myself or not knowing parts of myself, right? Because I knew myself, but
Mhm.
I knew I wanted to show my curly hair. I knew I got tanner than all of my family members when the sun came out. I knew I wanted to speak Spanish. I knew I wanted to listen to Spanish music over anything else,
Mhm.
but it was never around me. So when I moved to Miami, I feel like I always call Miami my home and I always call Miami my time of really finding myself because
Mhm.
I was able to fully immerse myself into the culture.
Right.
And being in Miami, my mom's side of the family lived in Miami or lives there still. My aunt, my sister, my cousins, my grandmother,
Yeah.
who I lived with for the first month when I moved out to Miami. I was fully able to immerse myself in that and I fully found myself. Like I was wearing my hair curly every single day. I was tan. I was speaking Spanish. I was listening to music. I was doing all of these things that I had wanting to do for so long. And it brought me closer to my mom. I feel like I finally was like, okay, I know who that part of me is.
Mhm.
And so just naturally over the 3 years that I lived there, I was able to just like open myself up to so many things.
Yeah.
And I'm just grateful for that experience. I'm grateful that I'm happy, I'm proud of myself for taking that leap. And again, it's just I feel like all of these experiences have just made me a better person and opened me up to like the life that I have now and the relationships that I have now.
How important is your background and culture? Is your background and culture to you right now in terms of like parenting your son? Like, how important is it to you that he is also connecting with, your Puerto Rican side, your Italian side, and hearing and understanding how that makes him who he is?
It's super, super, super important to me. All of it is really important to me. I want my son to know everything. I have books about LGBTQIA plus communities. I have, books about love, and in the books it's showing interracial couples. It's showing like men and women, and yeah, he's going to be very well versed in the spectrum of what the world is. And
Mm-hmm.
it's really important for me. I mean, he's raised around my Italian side, so that's who is right here. And then we
Mm-hmm.
actually just landed on Monday night from Puerto Rico. We were in Puerto Rico for a few days, and we were in
Mm-hmm.
Miami for a few days. We went to Miami from like Monday to Friday, and then we went to Puerto Rico Friday to Monday.
Mm-hmm.
So he got to meet all of our family in Puerto Rico. And he got to meet my friends in Miami, but my family in Miami has met him a bunch of times. So yeah, it's really, 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 really important for me. And even, he has family in Ohio. I've taken him on his dad's side, so he's gotten to experience all of his family in Ohio. It's family is really, really important to me. And I think one thing that I don't want to say I regret, but all of the anger and hate that I had towards my dad and a couple of my other family members growing up, I kind of wish I didn't, just because I get to experience the relationships now and I feel like, damn, I was a kid, I was angry, I missed out on a lot that I don't want my son to miss out on any of that. You know what
Mm-hmm.
I mean? So I'm close with, there's not one person in my life and my family that like I'm not good with. And so I need him to experience everybody and I want him around everybody. And I recently just started looking into getting like a nanny or a babysitter to come here often, or even like someone, to be here a lot. And my main priority is someone who speaks Spanish because I need him to speak Spanish because I don't.
Yeah.
And it's something that I wish I did. Like I just like it's not even my fault. It's not anybody's fault, really. I was raised, yeah, I would love to speak Spanish, but I'm gonna make sure that he does.
You mentioned before that.
I had so many goals that I feel like, not to sound cliche, but I feel like I've reached them.
Mhm.
And when I moved back home, one of my biggest goals was to create a mom group, and I did that. And I have a group of like almost 300 women now. And I actually went to Miami with one of the girls from my group, almost like it was like our first little like mom trip.
Mhm.
And it has been so amazing having that. But yeah, that was kind of like my next step, is having that and creating that. And I do want to expand it and like do it in other places. I would love to go to like different states and do it. It's just hard, the three meetups that I have had, it's like everyone says that they're coming and then like the day of everyone cancels kind of thing. So it's kind of scary to think about going to a different state and like doing that, and then I'm in a different
Yeah.
place and people are like, "Oh, just kidding, not coming."
Not coming.
You know what I mean? So I think that once the weather starts to get warmer, I'm definitely going to have more options and opportunities for moms to meet and do everything here in Pennsylvania. Um, but I would love to go on another show. I don't know if that necessarily means anything to do with my social media. Of course, any kind of um any kind of show or any kind of exposure is going to help, right?
Yeah.
But I I would love to be on another show. That's really where I was going with that. And then with social media, just to keep it genuine, I kind of threw out the idea of thinking that like you constantly have to be gaining followers and you
Mhm.
constantly have to be um getting bigger and growing on social media. I think that's super, super smart and super great. And I love that. Well, I love watching, of course, my social media grow, but I think it's also really, really, really important as for someone who comes off of a social media, I mean, it comes off of a reality show, who gets these followers so quickly. A
Mhm.
big thing you see is that people follow you initially, and then over time, it's like, okay, well, this person doesn't really align with my life anymore, so you lose a lot
Mhm.
of followers. It's happened to me twice or like three times now. I went up to like 1 million. I lost followers. Then I went up to 1.1 million. I lost followers. And now I'm kind of like at that point right now that, you kind of, it's not the same. A lot of my friends have been doing social media for years and grew their platform. So the people that they have following them are like, they're ride or dies. These are people who have been following them and keeping track of them for so long,
Mhm.
whereas I don't have that. So I think just keeping my followers that I do have engaged as much as possible and just seeing, I have to pay attention to like what people like most and
Mhm.
go with that, but make sure it also aligns with like things that I love doing.
Cool. What would be something you have anxiety, and so talk to me about your mental health and your journey there, and how does that affect you as a mom?
So my anxiety started when I was really, really young. It started in cars, and the only explanation I have for that is just my mom was killed in a car accident. So
Right.
I just think that that's kind of where it like came from.
Mhm.
I couldn't be in a car for like longer than an hour. I would get super car sick. I still get car sick, but it's not like as bad as when I was a child. Or it doesn't trigger my anxiety as much as it did. And then my parents immediately were very like hands-on. When I say my parents, it's my aunt, my uncle. They were very hands-on, got me into therapy, did everything that they really could.
Mhm.
And you know, it was really, really helpful being able and introduced to therapy, even though I was very reluctant growing up. And then I would say before I left from Miami, my parents' biggest issue was how bad my anxiety was, because my anxiety was really, 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 really bad.
Mhm.
And in high school, they even had this like gold pass. It was like a little piece of paper that if you started to feel anxious, you would just hold it up to your chest so that only the teacher could see it, and you had the option to just leave the classroom.
Oh, cool.
Um, because I had my first really bad panic attack in ninth grade in school. So then I got to know, the counsel, like the guidance counselors and everybody in like the guidance office. And so high school was really, really helpful with all of the help that I received,
Mhm.
because with the guidance counselors, you got to go to them like once a week or something like that. I forgot. We got to go to them like a lot and like make appointments to go like talk with them and stuff like that, which was really helpful. Um, and then yeah, when I moved to Miami, I had gone to college only 45 minutes from where I grew up because of my anxiety. Like it was just like a lot. It was really bad. And I just couldn't imagine leaving. And then so when I would move to Miami, my parents were just like really, really worried. Like, well, we can't just come get you anymore. You know, you're going to be hours away. And
Mhm.
I kid you not, when I moved to Miami, it was like my anxiety completely just went away.
Yeah.
And I was just so at peace. Like I just felt so comfortable. And I was like, I'm very much a loner and I love my solitude, but I also love meeting new people. So it
Mhm.
was just like, it was like when the two worlds collide, right? Because I lived with one of my friends that I met in Miami, but I was alone most of the time and got to go eat alone and do all of these things alone and meet people alone. And it just like opened my eyes up to so much that yeah, my anxiety, I mean, I would have panic attacks here and there and I would still have anxiety. It just doesn't like disappear. But
Mhm.
it was like it was a substantial decrease in my anxiety. And then when I moved to LA, same thing. I just felt like it was more of like I knew who I was comfortable in
Mhm.
myself, I was comfortable with everything. So my anxiety really was only during certain times. For example, like I feel like I'm slightly claustrophobic. So it'd be like on airplanes or if I had to sit in a closed space or like in school, if I was like in a closed classroom. It was like things like that. Not just like everyday, all day life. And then when I found out I was pregnant, so I started therapy. I was in therapy for a while, pretty much majority of my life. And then I stopped when I was like in Miami and California. And then when I found out I was pregnant, like the week I found out I was pregnant, I enrolled back into therapy.
Mhm.
And I had been in therapy up until I would say like a month ago. My therapist told me that I didn't need her anymore. She was
Oh
like,
wow.
yeah, she was like, you're great. You're amazing. You don't need me anymore. Like you really
Mhm.
don't. At this point, you're kind of just like wasting your money. And so yeah, I haven't talked to her in like a month. That was tough. That was a lot for me to like handle. I mean, I've been traveling for the past 2 weeks, so like I haven't had to like process it. But I'm
Mhm.
sure like when I get my period, I'm gonna be like, Allison, please. But no, yeah, no, I'm great. Like I said, mentally and physically, like I am at my height right now. I feel like I do so well at handling so many situations. I think a big thing for me was my communication. I was just like I said, angry all the time, and so like I was just very combative. I wasn't able to actually listen to people. I was hearing people to argue. And so I've gotten so much better at that. And I think that I'm just better at handling situations now. And I go to the gym and I take my son outside and I do things and I travel. So yeah, it's gotten a lot better. Don't get me wrong, I get anxiety. Still get anxiety. But we're just better at handling it now.
Good. Good. Having this platform, you've had it for a couple years now. What would be something that people don't know about you?
I feel like I've shared so much of myself with the world that like there's really I have bunions. People might not know that. I got bunions on both my feet. Yeah, I don't know. I'm short. That's one thing. I mean, people think I'm taller than I am. When people meet me in the out in the world, they're always like, "Oh my God, you're so small." I'm like, "Yep, I am little." Yeah,
Poor
that's really it. I
time.
don't know. That's it. That's all I got. I got a lot of tattoos. I feel like people know that. I'm kind of boring. The world knows me.
Absolutely not. If you could go back and tell yourself or advise yourself as a child, what would you go back and tell them?
What would I go back and tell my younger self? Stop being so angry. That's what I would say. Stop being so angry. Not everything has to be a fight.
Yeah,
That's what I would say. I was a very angry young child.
I get that. hmm I was there too. So I
Yes.
understand that. I think that probably has a lot to do with how I process things now and why I think for me it's just the only way I know how to be is to just be vulnerable and real because I spent so much time suppressing and masking and acting like things were not what they were. And so I think that's probably why I make it a point to like live in my truth now. So
Yep, I feel that wholeheartedly.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you right now?
Like an 8.
Nate?
I would say an 8. I'm not gonna give it a 10 because I've been up since 5 a.m. because my son woke up with a 100.7 fever and he's been
Oh.
extremely clingy and up my ass today. So that's why I can give it a 10 because I'm exhausted from this little boy.
Oh, you're such a great mom, so it'd be nice to see
Yeah.
you continuing to, on your mommy journey, do something in the future with your son that, like, what is one of your biggest goals?
Probably to go to another country together.
Yeah.
I would love to take him to like Italy or actually, yeah, that's really the only place that I can think. Um, I wonder if we have family there. That's crazy to think about. Yeah, I would love to take him to Italy just because he's gone to Puerto Rico and he gets to experience our Spanish side. I would
Hmm.
love to go. Even though I tell everybody I'm Italian in my pinky toe because I'm
Hmm.
literally I'm barely Italian. Um, yeah, I think that would be a really cool experience. Just taking him to a different country, but when he's older and able to like enjoy it, we've traveled so many places already that he hasn't gotten to like enjoy it. Like he'll never remember any of this stuff. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
But I'll always remember it. I think that a big thing for me losing my mom, Bray is at the age that I lost my mother. And I
Hmm.
think about the little intimate like jokes that we already have together, the way
Yeah.
that I love him, how many times I hug him and kiss him in a day, the toys that we play with together, the faces he makes, the jokes we make, the movies he likes, the foods he eats. I think about all of these things and I'm like, I didn't get to experience any of that, or I don't know what it was like with my mom. I have nothing of hers except a t-shirt.
Hmm.
I think constantly about like, I wonder what our favorite thing to do was, or how many times a day did she like being a mom? Did she want to be a mom? Did she hug
Hmm.
me? Did she kiss me? Naturally, I think about those things, especially the relationship that I have when it comes to physical touch
Hmm.
is so strained for me. I'm just not a physical touch person. I never was. And so I constantly think about, especially being a psychology major and a behavior having my master's, taking those child development classes, knowing that the first couple years are so important for physical touch and chest to chest and skin to skin and things like that. Knowing that I'm so strained in physical touch, I think about that like, well, what was she like? Did she hug me? Did she kiss me? Did she love me? Did she pick me up? Things like that. And, you know, I just think about so much when it comes to my son. And I do all of those things because if I were to be gone tomorrow, I have 3 journals written out of the last 2 years of his life, of all the things that we love to do together, pictures, Polaroids, videos. I mean, my Instagram is another like just a platform of like the life that we have together. Like he'll always have memory and he'll always know the things that we did together.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's just those are my goals is traveling and having experiences with him and just him knowing if I were to be gone tomorrow, just him knowing that like we had the best life no matter what it was or where we were.
That's incredible. And I love that. I absolutely love that. Well, thank you again for doing this. One more thing. Are you still in contact with other people from the show?
Of course. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Are you still friends?
Yeah, I mean, I'm closest to like people from other seasons. Um,
Hmm.
but like Joey sent Bray his first like car. He sent him like a big Range Rover
Oh,
and
cute.
Um, me and Shubham back in August, we met in Nashville and, hung out for a little bit. He got to see the baby. A lot of the circle members came for Bray's first birthday.
Oh,
Some came for my birthday. It's like I said, it's a family and it's a franchise that I'm forever grateful for the people that it's brought into my life.
I think that's amazing. And
Yeah.
I think that like a lot of people probably not aware of like how what happens after you've been in a reality show and how
Mhm.
like your life changes. But any regrets?
No, none.
Awesome.
Not any. Not one.
I think that's cool. You'd do it all over again.
Absolutely. I
Cool.
would do it all over again tenfold. Like I would go even harder next time, but I would do nothing.
Is there anything you would like to ask me?
Ooh. On a scale of 1 to 10, where's your mental health?
Ooh, okay. Scale of 1 to 10, where's my mental health? Let's see. I'd say I'm somewhere around like a 7,
Okay.
at this moment. Could be a little bit higher, but I'm also excited that I'm talking with you and I'm kind of doing what I love to do. So that makes me happy. Life is hard right now, and I think I'm just trying to get my bearings as a mom, and I have so many goals professionally. So I think that I'm just really focused on myself right now and focused on bettering myself. And so sometimes my mental health takes it takes a little bit of a dip. But I think as long as I continue to like do the things I love to do, and I do remain in a pretty steady place. So thank you for
Good.
that question.
Of course, of course. Well, one, you're a great mom. I know I
Thank
don't know you, and I don't
you.
know anything, but I feel like moms need to hear more that they're great moms. I was
You are
coming back from
too.
my flight. I was getting off the plane and like three people on the way out, I guess they saw me like with Bray and like on their way out they were just like you're an amazing mom. And like I had to go to the bathroom and cry and I'm not a crier. Like I'm not and I had to go to the bathroom and cry and it was like these people don't even fucking know me. They just saw I don't know
Yeah,
how much of me on a plane. And but it's like, damn, I really am a good fucking mom, whether they know me or not. Like I am a
yeah.
great mom. So yeah,
It
I think
feels
moms
good
need to hear that
though.
more.
It feels good to be seen, and
Yes.
and people who get it, and I
Hmm.
think that that's what makes those compliments so special,
Yeah.
because it's usually more meaningful from people you don't know, and you're like,
Yep.
oh, yeah, yeah,
Literally.
yeah. So, thank you again. This has been another episode of Unapologetically Anxious Me, Confessions of a Haitian Girl.
We're so happy to be here. Thank you so much. And I appreciated this a lot. And I actually really, really enjoyed this whole entire conversation.
Thank you. It's so comfortable talking to you. You're very easygoing, and you're just as delightful in person as you are on the show. So I
Thank
think
you.
that that's really cool, and you don't get to see that very often, to see
Yeah.
people genuinely being who they are and authentically living that way. So I think you're an amazing mom. I can't wait to see what you do next. And I wish you the best, and I hope we get to talk again in the future.
Yes, one day soon, for sure.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.